The world is told it is a miracle. A $1.5 billion suspension of logic hanging 600 meters over the Huajiang Grand Canyon. By 2025, it will be the tallest bridge on this planet. A structure of $2,000 live, MPa, high-strength steel, designed to bridge a gap that nature intended to be impassable, but the steel is a distraction. The real investigation isn't in the height of the pillars or the tension of the cables. The real investigation is in the silence that preceded it. For centuries, the canyon floor was not just a geographic feature, it was a fortress. The ethnic Buyi and Miao peoples lived within a state of vertical isolation, a sanctuary of limestone and mist that kept the homogenizing reach of the Central Plains at bay. Their languages, their customs, and their very identities were protected by the sheer impossibility of the terrain. The landscape was their shield. Now, that shield has been pierced. We are told this bridge is a gift of connectivity. We are told it is the final piece of a modern puzzle. But you don't spend $1.5 billion just to save a few farmers a long walk. You spend that kind of capital to dissolve a barrier. In China, every impossible bridge is a physical bypass of a traditional way of life. The state looked at a mountain range that had remained autonomous for millennia and decided that its existence was an inconvenience. They didn't build this to bring the world to the Miao people. They built it to bring the Miao people into the grid. We are about to look past the 4K drone shots and the official celebration of national unity to find what was actually buried under these foundations. Because when you build a bridge this high, you aren't just crossing a canyon, you are ensuring there is nowhere left to hide. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. I want to know exactly how far these hidden stories are reaching. To understand the scale of what is being dismantled, you have to look at the cast towers of Guizhou through the eyes of a tactician, not a tourist. For over 1,000 years, these vertical pillars of limestone were the only thing standing between the ethnic Buyi and Miao peoples and the suffocating reach of the Central Plains. This wasn't just remote living. This was vertical isolation as a form of cultural survival. In the high-altitude folds of the Huajiang Grand Canyon, the landscape was a natural fortress. The narrow, winding paths and 600-meter drops didn't just keep people out, they kept a way of life in. Here, languages that sound nothing like Mandarin survived. Here, the internal logic of the village, its rituals, its land sharing, its memory remained untouched by the homogenizing force of the state. The geography was the only thing the authorities in the distant cities couldn't easily map, tax, or control. But in the realm of geo-investigation, we see a pattern. The state defines independence as backwardness. The official narrative presents the Huajiang Canyon as a problem to be solved, a barrier to progress that trapped these people in a cycle of poverty. But if you look at the documented history of these ridges, you see a different story. The poverty was often a result of being pushed into the most marginal lands by centuries of Han expansion. The mountains were the final retreat. By building a $1.5 billion bridge over their heads, the state isn't just connecting a village to a market, it is physically removing the wall that protected a non-Han identity for 10 centuries. When the bridge is completed, the vertical isolation ends. The sanctuary becomes a suburb. The unreal view from the bridge deck is the sight of a 1,000-year-old defense system being rendered obsolete by a single line of asphalt. The mystery we are investigating is simple. Why is the world celebrating the construction of a bridge that serves as a high-speed funeral for a culture? In the boardroom of a state-owned enterprise in Guiyang, verticality isn't an aesthetic, It's a crime against the grid. To an administrative power, a landscape that cannot be traversed in under 10 minutes is a landscape that is functionally invisible. This is the $1.5 billion mandate, the total eradication of the off-grid space. When you investigate the funding behind the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge, the math stops looking like a charity project for poverty alleviation. $1.5 billion for a single span to serve a few thousand mountain residents. The return on investment for human welfare doesn't exist, but the return on geographic integration is infinite. By defining the canyon as a problem, the state justifies an intervention that reshapes the very earth. This is the kinetic marker of a forced evolution. The steel is $2,000 MPa, a grade of high-strength alloy, usually reserved for deep-sea oil rigs or high-stress military hangars. Why use it here? Because the bridge is designed to outlast the memory of the people beneath it. It is a permanent bypass. While the Buyi and Miao continue to walk the ancient limestone-cut paths of their ancestors, the state has built a $1.5 billion roof over their heads. The investigation reveals a chilling administrative logic. To modernize a place, you must first make it accessible to the tax collector, the police, and the data miner. The Huajiang Bridge is the physical manifestation of a digital and physical enclosure. It is the high-tension wire that pulls the most remote limestone towers into the centralized orbit of Beijing. We aren't just looking at a road, we are looking at the end of the wild map. Every centimeter of high-strength steel is a $1.5 billion signal that in the new China, there is no such thing as an unreachable soul. The state has spent a fortune to ensure that the unreal beauty of the canyon is the only thing left, while the reality of a self-contained, independent culture is quietly suffocated by the shadow of the world's tallest bridge. So, we arrive at the question the official travel promotions will never ask. Is the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge a path forward, or is it a high-tech seal on a cultural tomb? In the 4K drone footage, the $2,000 MPa steel looks like progress. It looks unreal. But the investigative depth we are chasing today reveals that the more impossible a location looks in modern China, the more likely it is that something real was destroyed to make it exist. This is the geographic paradox. The state creates a miracle to hide a disappearance. As we move from these limestone towers to the cliff villages of Sichuan and eventually to the drowned cities of the Yangtze, a pattern of strategic relocation begins to emerge. We are witnessing a terraforming project so vast it has physically altered the rotation of the Earth. Yet its primary target isn't the terrain, it is the human memory of the land. Over the next hour, we are going to strip away the tourism branding. We are going to look into the LGFV debt structures that fund these ghost cities, the sponge city mirages that turned into submerged graves, and the green walls of the Taklamakan Desert that serve as the borders of a high-tech open-air prison. The investigation starts here, 600 meters above a prehistoric void. Because to understand the unreal China of tomorrow, you have to understand exactly what happened to the real China of yesterday. The bridge is open, the bypass is complete, and the truth is no longer where they told us to look. In China, the map is no longer a fixed record of geological time. It has been reimagined as a fluid political variable. When we look at the jagged karst peaks of Sichuan or the deep silty basins of the Yangtze, we are not looking at nature in its raw state. We are looking at a landscape that has been processed through an administrative filter. The state does not see a mountain as a physical obstacle. It sees it as a data point that must be corrected to fit a centralized vision of the future. This is the transition from geography as a shared reality to to geography as a medium for power. To the investigator, the unreal nature of the Chinese landscape is a symptom of this terraforming. Every canyon bridged and every peak leveled is a statement of intent that no part of the earth is permitted to exist outside the reach of the urban grid. This is not about the beauty of the terrain. It is about the absolute subordination of the physical world to a singular national narrative. By defining the very soil and stone as an administrative challenge, the authorities have effectively ended the era of natural history. In its place, they have installed a techno-geographical system where every valley is a utility and every river is a battery. The mystery lies in what happens to the human psyche when the ground beneath its feet is treated as a temporary inconvenience. When the landscape is no longer a permanent anchor of identity, but a variable in a state-led calculation, the concept of home is hollowed out. We are investigating a world where the mountains have been demoted to infrastructure, and where the people are being taught that the earth itself is something that can and should be overcome by the will of the machine. For centuries, the Yi people of Atulea lived within the vertical frontier, a space defined by 800 meters of sheer rock. To the outside observer, their reliance on vine ladders to reach their homes was a sign of desperate struggle. But for the Yi, this was a tactical choice for autonomy. The cliff was a sanctuary. By living on a plateau that required an elite level of physical endurance to access, they maintained a sovereign existence that was functionally immune to the taxes, censuses, and cultural pressures of the lowlands. This was not a life of poverty in the sense of a failed system. It was a life of strategic distance. The vine ladder was a filter. It allowed for essential trade while ensuring that the central authorities could never easily project power into their ancestral domain. The geography was an ally in their resistance against being absorbed into the Han-dominated plains. In the investigative record, we see that the Yi did not view their location as a trap until the state began to frame it as one. Their history is one of vertical mastery, where the ability to scale a cliff face was a rite of passage and a marker of a people who could not be easily governed. They built a society on top of a geographic anomaly because it offered the one thing the modern world increasingly lacks: the right to be left alone. When we investigate the Cliff Village, we are not looking at a place that time forgot. We are looking at a place that fought to stay forgotten, only to be rediscovered by a state that views unmapped autonomy as a threat to its internal security. The shift began when the state-controlled cameras arrived. In a series of highly produced media campaigns, the ancestral endurance of the Yi was stripped of its dignity and reframed as poverty porn. The vine ladders were no longer presented as a feat of human skill, but as a shameful relic of a backward era that the state had a moral obligation to erase. This was a tactical rebrand designed to justify a radical intervention. By focusing exclusively on the danger of the climb, the official narrative obscured the cultural and political value of the isolation itself. The media didn't talk about the sovereignty of the Yi, they talked about the heartbreak of the children climbing to school. This emotional manipulation served a specific administrative purpose. It turned a self-sufficient, independent community into a humanitarian crisis that required state-led rescue. The investigation reveals that this is a recurring pattern in the dismantling of minority cultures. First, the traditional way of life is labeled as unbearable. Then, the geography is labeled as impossible. Finally, the intervention is presented as a gift. By the time the world saw the images of the vine ladders, the verdict had already been reached in the planning offices of Chengdu. The Yi were no longer a people with a history. They were a demographic in need of uplifting. This rebranding allowed the state to move into the vertical frontier under the guise of compassion, hiding the fact that the primary goal was the permanent termination of a non-Han cultural sanctuary. The wound was opened by the camera before the first piece of steel was ever bolted into the cliff. The physical manifestation of this rescue arrived in the form of a $2,556 step steel ladder, costing roughly $150,000, and utilizing tons of industrial alloy. This structure was a physical replacement for the ancient vine. On the surface, it was a massive improvement in safety, but for the investigator, the steel ladder was a transitional tool, a bridge between a sovereign village and a controlled urban grid. It was the first step in the modernization process that stripped the Yi of their geographic shield. The ladder wasn't built to sustain the village for another century. It was built to make the village accessible for its final processing. By installing the steel, the state effectively mapped the cliff. It turned an elite climb into a manageable staircase, allowing for a level of administrative surveillance that was previously impossible. Government officials, health inspectors, and digital monitors could now ascend the cliff with ease. The ladder was the physical vein through which the state's influence began to flow into the heart of Atulea. While the world marveled at the impossible engineering of the steel stairs, the inhabitants were being prepared for the next phase of the mandate. The investigation shows that the ladder served as a massive publicity stunt, a visual proof of the state's commitment to poverty alleviation. Yet, even as the steel was being welded, the plans for the village's relocation were already being finalized. The ladder was never a long-term solution for the people. It was a high-tech walkway designed to lead them away from their land and into the resettlement centers, where their identity would be easier to manage. This brings us to the geometry of control. Why can the state not allow unmapped human endurance to exist? Because a person who can survive on an 800-meter cliff without the help of the grid is a person the grid cannot threaten. The relocation of Atulea in 2020 was the final act in this investigative drama. The impossible village was not abandoned. It was relocated to urban apartment blocks, leaving the original site as a hollowed-out tourist shell. The geography was conquered not by the steel ladder, but by the administrative order that followed it. This is the core of the Unreal China mystery. The state manufactures a futuristic solution to a problem it defined, only to use that solution to erase the reality of the people involved. The Yi of Atulea are now residents of standardized concrete blocks, their lives tracked by the digital systems that these new developments provide. Their ancestral cliff has been demoted to a curated exhibit, a place for city dwellers to take photos of overcome backwardness. The geometry of the new China is a grid of total visibility, where every home is accessible and every person is tethered to a utility line. There is no room in this geometry for a vine ladder, a limestone sanctuary, or a culture that defines itself through its distance from the center. The unreal beauty of the steel ladder masks a chilling truth. The state has successfully closed the vertical frontier. What we see today as a triumph of engineering is, in reality, the final border crossing of a power that will not stop until the entire map is as flat, predictable, and controllable as a digital spreadsheet. In May 2020, the administrative hammer finally fell on the vertical frontier. Within a span of a few days, 84 households were ordered to descend the $2,556 step steel ladder for the last time. This was the relocation mandate, a logistical operation designed to empty the cliffs of Atulea and process its inhabitants into the standardized concrete blocks of Zhaozhui County. The move was framed as a grand humanitarian gesture, yet the investigative reality reveals a cold, clinical efficiency. These families were not moving to a new home. They were being integrated into a state-managed housing system. They traded their ancestral plateau for 80-square-meter apartment units, floor plans that are identical across thousands of resettlement sites in Western China. By removing the Yi people from the cliff, the state solved a surveillance problem. It is much easier to monitor a population when they are concentrated in a single urban center, tethered to a digital payment system and a national ID registry. The impossible village was suddenly silent, its human pulse extracted and reinserted into a grid where every movement is traceable. This was the end of the sovereign mountain dweller. The transition was absolute, leaving no room for the fluid, traditional roots that had defined the Yi for generations. As the last of the elders reached the valley floor, the geography of the cliff face was officially declared a closed chapter of history, repurposed for a future that had no need for the people who actually built its legacy. The mud and stone dwellings of Atulair were not demolished. Instead, they were placed under a preservation order that had nothing to do with historical respect. The state realized that a vacant cliff was a wasted asset. It needed the architecture to remain as a performance. By keeping the original structures intact, the authorities created a physical stage for the narrative of overcome backwardness. This is architecture used as a weapon of messaging. When outsiders visit today, they see the ancient walls and the vine remnants, but they are looking at a curated ghost. The buildings have been stripped of their function as shelters and reimagined as props in a state-led drama of progress. The investigation into these preserved sites reveals a chilling disconnect. The houses are maintained to show how unbearable life used to be, while the people who once found strength in those walls are now miles away, living in concrete boxes. This is a deliberate, aesthetic choice to validate the relocation. If the village had been leveled, the memory of the Yi's vertical mastery might have lingered. By keeping it as a hollow shell, the state ensures that the only permitted interpretation of the cliff is one of failure and rescue. The unreal nature of the site is now its primary feature. It is a museum of a life that the state decided was no longer allowed to exist. A place where the stones remain, but the spirit of resistance has been carefully vacuumed away to make room for the next wave of government-approved spectators. The processing of the Yi identity began the moment they crossed the threshold of the resettlement centers. In the cliffs, the Yi were masters of agricultural autonomy, surviving on a complex system of terrace farming and livestock that required no external input. In the urban blocks, that autonomy was systematically dismantled. They were moved into a world where every necessity, water, heat, food, is a commodity provided by the state utility grid. This is the resettlement trap. By severing the connection to the land, the state effectively converted a self-sufficient people into a dependent workforce. The investigation shows that many of the relocated Yi now struggle with the loss of their traditional social structures, which were tied to the physical layout of the mountain village. In the apartment blocks, the communal courtyards are replaced by narrow hallways and locked doors. The elders, who once held the collective memory of the tribe, find themselves isolated in a high-rise environment that offers them no role. They are modern now, but at the cost of the very social fabric that allowed them to scale 800-meter cliffs for a millennium. The state-provided jobs are often menial, cleaning the very tourist sites that were once their homes or working in nearby factories. This is the human consequence of the unreal landscape. A people whose identity was forged in the vertical frontier are being flattened into a uniform labor class, their history traded for a television and a concrete floor. Today, Atulair has been rebranded as a museum of poverty. Domestic tourists pay for the privilege of climbing the steel ladder, treating the 800-meter ascent as a weekend fitness challenge or a social media backdrop. They come to experience the thrill of the cliff, but they are insulated from the reality of the people who were forced to leave it. The state sells the experience of the climb while ensuring that the actual inhabitants are barred from ever returning to their ancestral ways. This is the ultimate commodification of a culture's struggle. The investigation reveals that the revenue generated from this poverty tourism rarely reaches the relocated families in any meaningful way. Instead, it funds the infrastructure of the Tourism Bureau and the maintenance of the Unreal exhibit. The tourists walk through the empty dwellings, marveling at the toughness of the Yi, unaware that they are walking through a crime scene of administrative violence. The very people who made the cliff legendary are now invisible spectators to their own heritage. The state has successfully inverted the geography. What was once a site of strategic isolation is now a site of mass consumption. The mystery of the cliff village has been solved by a ticket booth. By turning the village into a destination, the authorities have ensured that it can never again be a fortress. The Unreal China thrives on this transformation, where the physical scars of a culture are polished and sold as entertainment, ensuring the buried truths stay exactly where the state wants them, under the feet of 1,000 passing travelers. This hollowed reality is a preview of the broader investigation into China's terraforming. A location becomes unreal the moment its human pulse is replaced by a state-managed exhibition. Atulaia is not an isolated case. It is the prototype for a national strategy of geographic erasure. When we look at these impossible places, we must ask, who is being removed so that this image can exist? The investigation suggests that the state is systematically replacing real China, the messy, autonomous, and culturally diverse landscape, with a curated, centralized version that is easier to govern and more profitable to display. The Cliff Village is now a ghost in a steel cage, a place where the geography has been stripped of its power to protect. The wound of the Yi people is the silence that follows the relocation, a silence that is now being filled by the chatter of tourists and the hum of the urban grid. We are seeing a landscape that has been conquered not by nature, but by the algorithm of progress. The unreal beauty of the steel ladder and the preserved huts masks a chilling administrative victory, the total termination of the vertical frontier. As we move deeper into this investigation, from the mountains of Sichuan to the ghost cities of the north, we find the same pattern repeating. The state builds a miracle to mask a disappearance, and the map is rewritten to ensure that the people who once knew the land are the only ones who can no longer find their way home. Guizhou is the poorest province in China, a land of fractured caste and vertical isolation, yet it is home to nearly half of the world's 100 tallest bridges. To the casual observer, the sheer density of these steel giants is a sign of an economic miracle. But to the investigator, this is a concrete mirage. We have to ask how a region with one of the lowest GDPs in the country became the global epicenter of high-budget engineering. This is the investigative friction. The bridge-building pace does not match the local economic reality. In many of these mountain counties, the cost of a single bridge exceeds the entire annual tax revenue of the surrounding population. The official narrative claims these structures are the key to lifting the region out of poverty, but the data tells a different story. These are not just transit routes, they are kinetic markers of a massive capital injection into a landscape that cannot naturally support it. We are looking at a province that has been force-fed infrastructure to create an illusion of growth. The bridges do not serve the people as much as they serve the industrial machine that produces the steel and cement. The unreal height of these spans is a distraction from the ground-level truth that the local economy is being hollowed out to maintain a visual spectacle of modernization. The density of the infrastructure is a symptom of a deeper administrative mandate, one that values the construction of the grid over the sustainability of the lives lived within it. The money for these impossible projects does not come from a standard government budget. It flows through a shadow system known as local government financing vehicles, or LGFVs. This is the shell game of modern Chinese development. Because local municipalities are legally restricted from borrowing directly from banks to fund infrastructure, they create these independent companies to rack up off-balance sheet debt. By 2024, the estimated debt held by these entities reached $9 trillion, a figure so vast it threatens the stability of the entire national economy. When we look at a bridge in the Huajiang Canyon, we are looking at a physical manifestation of a loophole. These LGFVs allow the state to bypass central banking regulations, creating a mountain of credit that is never intended to be repaid in the traditional sense. The investigation into these financial structures reveals a terrifying lack of oversight. The projects are approved not based on their utility, but on their ability to generate immediate, artificial GDP growth. This is a closed loop of capital where the state-owned banks lend to state-owned companies to build state-mandated bridges on state-owned land. The unreal engineering is simply the byproduct of a system that must keep building to prevent the debt bubble from bursting. The mystery is no longer how they build so high, but how long they can maintain the fiction that this debt is an asset rather than a terminal liability. When a municipality owes more than 100% of its annual economic output, debt becomes a tool of enclosure. In provinces like Guizhou and Yunnan, the fiscal weight of these impossible bridges has created a state of permanent administrative dependency. The local governments are no longer serving their citizens, they are serving their creditors. This is the debt to GDP trap. To keep the interest payments flowing, the state must find new ways to extract value from the landscape, often at the direct expense of the people. The investigation into these unreal structures reveals that they function as literal anchors of control. A village that was once self-sufficient and off-grid is now physically and fiscally tethered to a system that demands a constant return. This is not about the freedom of movement, it is about the enclosure of the map. By saddling the most remote regions with unpayable debt, the central authorities ensure that these areas can never return to an autonomous way of life. They are locked into a cycle where the only way to pay for the last bridge is to approve the next one. The human consequence is a loss of agency. The local leaders are reduced to project managers for a distant financial center, and the residents are treated as the collateral for a gamble they never agreed to join. The unreal landscape is a gilded cage, where every soaring arch is a reminder that the land is no longer sovereign. The build-at-all-costs mandate serves a specific extraction model. These bridges and tunnels are strategically used to artificially inflate land values in areas that were previously worthless to the market. By bringing high-speed rail and multi-lane highways into the karst heartland, the state improves the territory, allowing it to sell usage rights back to developers for luxury resorts or standardized agricultural hubs. The investigation reveals that this is the primary engine of the infrastructure boom. The bridge is the hook that pulls the land into the commercial sphere. As the land value rises, the local people lose their ancestral rights. They are often encouraged to move into the resettlement blocks we investigated earlier, clearing the path for a new, state-managed version of the landscape. The mountains are no longer a home. They are a ledger. This is the asset extraction model. The state uses debt to build the unreal, uses the unreal to revalue the earth, and then sells that value to the highest bidder. The original inhabitants are left with a concrete room and a view of a bridge they cannot afford to cross. We are seeing a systematic transfer of wealth from the communal and ancestral to the corporate and centralized. The unreal China is built on this foundation of displacement, where the beauty of the infrastructure is the only thing that remains after the people's connection to the soil has been severed. The fiscal chain is the final layer of this mystery. The unreal infrastructure serves as a literal anchor, ensuring that no remote corner of the map remains truly independent. Every bridge is a high-speed artery for a predatory debt cycle that drains the resources of the hinterland to fuel the growth of the urban centers. The investigation concludes that these projects are designed to be too big to fail and too expensive to ignore. By the time a bridge is finished, the local culture has been transformed into a workforce. The land has been converted into an asset, and the government has been turned into a debtor. This is the reality of the unreal. We are watching the construction of a physical and financial grid from which there is no escape. The human cost is the erasure of the off-grid possibility. When the landscape is fully bridged and the debt is fully loaded, the concept of an alternative way of life disappears. The people are integrated into a system that values their labor and their data, but has no use for their history or their soul. The unreal China is a preview of a future where geography is fully subordinated to the ledger and where the most impossible structures are the ones that finally break the human spirit's connection to the earth. The bridge is not a path to the future. It is the chain that keeps the present locked in place. The label of a ghost city is an analytical failure. To the Western observer, the empty boulevards and vacant high-rises of Kangbashi look like a colossal error in judgment, a monument to over-expansion. But in the realm of geo-investigation, we see a high-functioning financial engine. The city was never designed with human residency as its primary objective. It was designed as a physical vault for capital. Built on the edge of the Ordos Desert, Kangbashi is a $5 billion solution to a liquidity problem. The state did not need people to move in. It needed a reason to issue debt, sell land, and move massive amounts of currency through the construction sector. When we walk these silent streets, we are not looking at a failed settlement. We are looking at a successfully executed financial instrument. The unreal quiet of the metropolis is not a sign of death, but of a different kind of life, the life of the ledger. By detaching the value of the city from the presence of its citizens, the authorities created a landscape that functions independently of human need. The mystery is why the world continues to measure these places by occupancy rates, when the state is measuring them by land value extraction. Kangbashi proved that you could build a world-class infrastructure in a wasteland and use it to validate the existence of a massive administrative bureaucracy. It is the first city in history where the buildings are the occupants and the humans are merely an optional afterthought. The transformation of the Gobi Sands into a metropolitan asset was fueled by the black gold beneath the surface. For decades, the Ordos region was a fractured landscape of coal mines and nomadic routes, but the 2000s energy boom provided the capital for a radical administrative expansion. The local government did not use this wealth to diversify the economy. They used it to terraform the desert into a $5 billion metropolis. This was a tactical maneuver to justify the massive expansion of the state's internal footprint. By creating Kangbashi, the authorities moved the seat of power from the old, cramped district of Dongsheng to a pristine, controlled environment where every square meter was a state-owned asset. This is the extraction model at its most aggressive. The state pulls resources from the ground and immediately converts them into concrete and glass to prevent the capital from leaving the region. The investigation reveals that the city was built at a pace that outran the very possibility of migration. But the pace was the point. The faster the city rose, the faster the land could be reclassified from wasteland to primary development zone, a move that allowed the government to sell land use rights to state-owned developers at a massive premium. The Ordos model is a closed-loop system where the geography is mined twice, once for the coal and once for the real estate value created by the city's presence. The aesthetics of Kangbashi are a monumental distraction designed to validate a massive financial gamble. We see the obsidian glass libraries that look like fallen meteorites and the oversized bronze statues of Genghis Khan charging through empty plazas. These structures are not cultural tributes, they are physical collateral. To secure the billions in loans required to build a city in the desert, the local government had to create a visual proof of value. An empty lot has no borrowing power, but a lot with a futuristic museum and a grand theater is an improved asset that can be used to back even more debt. This is why the architecture is so unreal. It has to look expensive to be treated as expensive by the state-controlled banks. The investigation into these monuments reveals that they serve as psychological anchors for the investors and the bureaucracy. They provide a sense of permanence to a project that is built on shifting sand and speculative debt. The Genghis Khan statues are not there to inspire the locals, of which there were fewer than $30,000 of dollar in a city built for $1 million during its first decade. They are there to signal to the central authorities that the local government has created a world-class center worthy of continued capital injection. The architecture is a performance of stability in a landscape of fiscal volatility. The financial mechanics of Ordos reveal a closed loop of capital that functions with a chilling clinical efficiency. The city's construction funded the very bureaucracy that ordered it, creating a self-sustaining cycle of debt and development. This is how the system works. The local government creates an LGFV to borrow money from a state bank. That money is used to build a road or a library in the desert. The construction of that road increases the theoretical value of the surrounding sand. The government then auctions the usage rights for that improved sand to a developer who borrows more money from the same state bank to pay the government. This revenue is then used to pay the salaries of the officials who planned the road and to service the interest on the original loan. The cycle repeats, moving billions of dollars through the economy without a single resident ever having to buy a loaf of bread or pay a local tax. The city exists to keep the money moving. Human residency is a secondary byproduct that often complicates the clinical beauty of the ledger. In Kangbashi, the buildings are the primary customers of the state's utility grid. The mystery lies in the endgame. What happens when there is no more coal to fund the interest, or when the unreal city runs out of desert to claim? Until that day, the Ordos model stands as a masterclass in land value extraction, a metropolis that is physically real but socially vacant. The human cost of this terraforming is found in the displacement of the Mongolian nomads, whose ancestral grazing lands were swallowed by the sprawl. For generations, the Ordos Plateau was a space of fluid movement, where the relationship between the people and the earth was defined by the seasons and the needs of the livestock. When the city mandate arrived, these lands were reclassified as primary development zones, and the nomads were subjected to strategic relocation. They were encouraged to trade their herds and their horizons for a concrete room on the urban margins of the new city. The investigation into this transition reveals a profound loss of identity. The herder, who once managed thousands of acres, is now a security guard for an empty shopping mall or a cleaner for a glass library they will never use. Their traditional social structures, which were tied to the vastness of the plateau, have been crushed into the narrow dimensions of an apartment block. They are the invisible casualties of the Ordos model, people whose lives were treated as an inconvenience to the construction of a financial asset. The state-provided compensation is often a fraction of the land's theoretical value, ensuring that the former nomads remain at the bottom of the new urban hierarchy. The unreal city was built on their displacement, its high rises standing on the very soil where their ancestors once moved with the wind. The Ordos investigation provides a prototype for the post-human city, a landscape where buildings are financial instruments first and shelters second. Kangbashi is the blueprint for a future where the map is no longer populated by people, but by assets. This is the ultimate goal of the Unreal China project, the creation of a geography that is fully subordinated to the needs of the central administrative and financial systems. As we look at the empty plazas and the obsidian towers, we realize that we are looking at the beta test for a world where the landscape has been fully converted into a utility. The ghost city is not a failure, it is a success of a different order. It proves that the state can terraform the desert, relocate a population, and generate billions in artificial value through the sheer force of bureaucratic will. This model is now being exported to other provinces, creating a network of unreal metropolitan hubs that serve as the nervous system for the state's debt-driven growth. The mystery we are investigating is how long a civilization can survive when its primary achievement is the construction of empty monuments to its own credit rating. The Ordos model tells us that the reality of the people is the first thing to be discarded in the pursuit of the unreal spectacle. The city remains a silent, glass and steel witness to a world that has decided that the presence of a human soul is an optional luxury in the design of the future. Zhengzhou Financial Island was conceived as a $1.5 billion circle of economic invincibility, a perfect ring of steel and glass rising from a reclaimed lake. To the administrative mind, the circular geometry of the district represented a closed system of prosperity, a high-tech hub designed to anchor the central plains of China. The investigation into its construction reveals a landscape that was physically forced into existence. The water of the original lake was not drained. It was managed, partitioned, and surrounded by dozens of luxury high-rises and state-of-the-art office towers. This is the unreal aesthetic of the Henan province, a futuristic financial center built on top of a fragile hydrological reality. The state marketed this island as the crowning achievement of the new urban frontier, a place where the volatility of the natural world had been finally tamed by the power of the construction mandate. But the circular design was more than just a visual choice. It was a statement of geographic defiance. By building a massive concentration of wealth on a reclaimed floodplain, the authorities were betting that their engineering could outpace the historical memory of the Yellow River Basin. The island was a symbol of a world where the map is whatever the state decides to draw, regardless of the water that flows beneath the surface. To protect this $1.5 billion gamble, the state implemented the Sponge City Mandate, an ambitious urban planning initiative designed to make the terraformed landscape immune to flooding. The official claim was that the city would function like a giant sponge, using permeable pavements, green roofs, and massive underground storage tanks to absorb and repurpose rainwater. This was the narrative of climate resilience, a promise that high-tech infrastructure could solve the inherent risks of building on a floodplain. The investigation into the Sponge City rollout in Zhengzhou reveals a heavy reliance on data-driven models that assumed nature would follow a predictable pattern. The authorities spent billions to turn the city into a porous machine, convincing the population that they were living in the safest urban environment ever constructed. But this was a mirage of safety. The unreal surfaces of the financial island were designed for a specific type of storm, a manageable, theoretical event. The state used the Sponge City label to justify the continued expansion of high-density districts into ecologically fragile areas, ignoring the fact that a sponge has a limit. By the time the district was completed, the narrative of invincibility had become so pervasive that the physical reality of the land, a basin prone to extreme weather, was treated as a solved equation. In July 2021, the record-breaking rainfall of a 1,000-year storm hit Hainan, and the unreal infrastructure of the Sponge City suffered a catastrophic rupture. In just 3 days, a year's worth of rain fell on Zhengzhou, overwhelming the permeable surfaces and the underground tanks in hours. The investigation into the failure reveals a terrifying disconnect between the state's terraforming hubris and the geological reality of the terrain. The Sponge City did not absorb the water. It became a funnel. The very systems designed to manage the flow were bypassed by the sheer volume of the deluge. The financial island, once the pride of the provincial government, was suddenly surrounded by a rising sea of mud and debris. The record shows that the automated sensors and the smart floodgates failed to keep pace with the reality on the ground. This was the moment the unreal China met the real world, and the result was a systemic collapse. The state's narrative of climate resilience was exposed as a thin veneer. The water did not follow the paths laid out by the architects. It reclaimed the floodplains that had been paved over, turning the futuristic district into a stranded monument to failed planning. The most chilling evidence of this failure was found in the Line 5 subway and the Jingguang North Road tunnel, which became submerged tombs for those trapped inside. As the impossible engineering of the transit system met the floodwaters, thousands of commuters were suddenly caught in the very modernization they had been taught to trust. In the subway, passengers stood in waist-deep water, recording their final messages as the oxygen began to thin, while in the tunnel, hundreds of vehicles were swallowed in minutes. This is the human cost of the terraforming disconnect. The investigation reveals that the unreal aesthetics of the transit hubs had blinded the operators to the necessity of a manual override. The high-tech signals kept the trains moving into the flooded tunnels because the system was not programmed for a total environmental revolt. The thousands who were trapped were the victims of a world that values the speed of the grid over the safety of the individual. When the water finally receded, the state's response was to quickly clean the sites and suppress the death toll, attempting to maintain the illusion of control even as the families of the victims stood in the mud, demanding answers that the smart city could not provide. The investigative gap in Zhengzhou is found in the deliberate suppression of historical climate records. While the state continues to build climate-resilient hubs on seismic fault lines and floodplains, the actual data suggests that these areas are becoming increasingly volatile. The investigation reveals that the development mandate for the financial island ignored centuries of warnings about the Yellow River's capacity for destruction. By treating the landscape as a blank slate, the authorities have created a cycle of risk, where the unreal districts are always the most vulnerable. This is the climate data disconnect. The state uses futuristic aesthetics to mask a fundamental disregard for environmental stability. We are seeing a pattern where modern China is being built on foundations that are geologically and meteorologically unsound. The mystery lies in the persistence of the development even after the 2021 disaster, the construction of new sponge cities continues, fueled by the same LGFV debt structures we investigated in the mountains of Guizhou. The state is doubling down on a terraforming model that has already proven to be lethal, betting that they can engineer their way out of a crisis that their own planning helped create. The Zhengzhou investigation reveals a mirage of safety that defines the unreal landscape. The futuristic aesthetics of the new districts create a false sense of security, blinding the population to the environmental volatility of the terrain they inhabit. When you live in a world of perfect circles, glass towers, and automated subways, it is easy to believe that the Earth has been tamed. But the submerged tombs of 2021 serve as a permanent reminder that the grid is only as strong as its weakest point. This is the broader mystery of the unreal China. The state is building a civilization that is physically detached from its own environment. The financial island is a prototype for a future where the landscape is treated as a temporary platform for capital, a world where the reality of the people is sacrificed to maintain the visual spectacle of progress. As we move from the flooded plains of Henan to the frozen heights of the Tibetan Plateau, we find the same hubris repeating. The state continues to pierce the bedrock and reclaim the lakes, assuming that the machine will always hold the water back. But the investigation into the Sponge City mirage shows that when the machine fails, the consequence is not just a financial loss, it is a human erasure of staggering proportions. The Lhasa-Ningxi Railway is a 435-kilometer breach into the permafrost of the third pole, a feat of engineering that operates at an average elevation of 3,000 meters. To the outside observer, the 47 tunnels and 121 bridges are wonders of modern construction, but to the investigator, they are a forced entry into a landscape that has spent millennia defending its own borders through sheer altitude. This is not a journey meant to respect the terrain, it is an assault on it. Over 75% of this line consists of bridges and tunnels, meaning the train rarely touches the original surface of the plateau. By piercing the Himalayan bedrock, the state has effectively bypassed the natural defenses of the Tibetan geography. The investigation into the construction reveals that this was a race against the elements, a high-stakes gamble to install a permanent physical presence in a region that was once functionally inaccessible for half the year. The unreal speed of the project completed in just 6 years was a tactical necessity to ensure that the isolation of the high-altitude frontier was terminated before the climate could mount a defense. We are looking at a landscape that has been surgically altered to accommodate a machine, a world where the mountain is no longer a sovereign entity, but a hollowed-out corridor for a centralized power. The logistics of this integration reveal a deeper administrative motive. By connecting Lhasa to Ningxi in under 4 hours, the state has physically anchored the heart of Tibet to the industrial hubs of Sichuan. This is the 435-kilometer line of control. Before this rail existed, the journey took days across treacherous mountain passes, a reality that allowed for a level of regional autonomy and cultural insulation. The investigation into the unreal efficiency of the new schedule shows that it was designed to dissolve the natural barriers that once defined the Himalayan experience. This is not about the freedom of the traveler, it is about the compression of space. By shortening the distance between the center and the periphery, the authorities have ensured that the Tibetan Plateau is no longer a distant frontier, but a manageable district. The rail line serves as a high-speed artery for the mass movement of people, resources, and ideas from the lowlands, ensuring that the local identity is constantly diluted by the influx of the outside world. The unreal nature of the journey, smooth, fast, and climate-controlled masks, is the reality that the geography has been stripped of its power to slow down the march of the state. Peeling back the label of a scenic wonder reveals the dual-use deception of the Ningxi stations. These are not mere transit hubs for tourists. They are high-capacity logistics centers built to military specifications. The investigation into the weight-bearing capacity of the 121 bridges reveals they were engineered to carry far more than just passenger carriages. They are designed for the rapid deployment of heavy armor and dual-use equipment. This is the project of sinicization in its most literal form, the infrastructure of the state, masquerading as a public utility. The oversized platforms and reinforced tunnels are primary arteries for a security apparatus that requires total mobility across the plateau. By building these tracks, the state has ended the geological autonomy of Tibet, ensuring that any point on the map can be reached by a centralized force within hours. The unreal beauty of the glass-walled stations is a distraction from their primary function as the nervous system of a high-tech occupation. Every sleeper laid and every tunnel blasted is a statement of permanent intent, a signal that the Himalayas are no longer a barrier to the projection of state power, but a platform for it. The railway also serves as a high-capacity conveyor for the resource extraction vein. Beneath the scenic landscape of the Tibetan Plateau lie some of the world's largest deposits of copper and gold, resources that were previously trapped by the sheer impossibility of the terrain. The investigation into the rail's path reveals that it aligns perfectly with major mining concessions. This is the systematic removal of Tibet's geological wealth, hidden behind the aesthetic of a high-speed travel documentary. The rail line provides the heavy lift capability required to move millions of tons of ore from the high-altitude mines to the industrial smelters of the interior. While the state-controlled media focuses on the happiness of the passengers, the reality is a massive logistical operation to drain the plateau of its natural assets. This is the true meaning of the third pole pierced. The mountains are being gutted from the inside out. The human consequence is a landscape that is being turned into an industrial zone, where the sacred peaks of the ancestors are reimagined as raw materials for a global manufacturing machine. The rail is the physical link that makes this extraction profitable, turning a sovereign wilderness into a state-owned warehouse. The psychological impact of this piercing is the final termination of a landscape once defined by its physical inaccessibility. For the Tibetan population, the sight of 47 tunnels carving through their sacred bedrock is a visual proof of their lost autonomy. Geography was once their greatest ally, a natural shield that protected their spiritual and cultural practices from external interference. Now, that shield has been shattered. The investigation reveals that the piercing of the mountains has signaled a shift in the local consciousness. The land no longer feels like a sanctuary, but like a managed territory. This is the end of geological autonomy. When the mountain is no longer an obstacle to the machine, the belief in the mountain's power begins to fade. The state has used the unreal engineering of the rail line to demonstrate that no physical feature is sacred or permanent. This is an administrative victory over the spirit of the place, a way of proving that the will of the state is superior to the reality of the earth. The rail line is a psychological weapon, a constant reminder that the center can reach any corner, penetrate any peak, and overwrite any history it chooses. The broader mystery is encapsulated in the oxygenated carriage. The automated cabins of the Lhasa Ningxi Railway are pressurized and pumped with artificial oxygen, creating a sterile environment that is physically disconnected from the reality of the high-altitude world outside the window. This is the unreal experience of the plateau, moving through a 3,000-meter landscape without ever having to breathe its air. It is a metaphor for the state's approach to the region, a high-tech enclosure that allows for the extraction of value while protecting the operators from the environment they are destroying. The carriage is a mobile bubble of the interior, a piece of the plains moving through the mountains. By turning the plateau into a sterile corridor, the authorities have ensured that the human connection to the land is replaced by a screen-based observation. The passengers see the mountains, but they do not feel the cold or the thinness of the air. This disconnection is the ultimate goal of the Unreal China project, the creation of a world where the physical Earth is merely a backdrop for the movement of power, and where the human pulse is synchronized not with the seasons, but with the rhythm of the machine. The massive scale of the Ningqi rail infrastructure is a logistical anomaly that contradicts the modest civilian needs of the surrounding region. Ningqi is a town of limited population, yet its rail hub is built with the heavy load freight capabilities of a major industrial gateway. The investigation into these platforms reveals a strategic military and industrial staging ground, designed for a purpose far more urgent than tourism. The tracks are reinforced to handle the weight of heavy armor and high-capacity cargo trains that run independent of the passenger schedule. This is the primary function of the Ningqi terminus, to serve as a high-speed pressure point on the Himalayan frontier. By establishing this level of freight density, the state has created a permanent bridgehead into the high-altitude wilderness. The unreal sight of these vast, echoing stations in the middle of a mountain forest is a signal of a world where the infrastructure is built to support the movement of a security apparatus, not the movement of a community. The civilian passengers are merely the optic that justifies the construction of a military artery. Every square meter of concrete in the Ningqi hub is a calculated investment in the projection of power, ensuring that the most remote corner of the Tibetan plateau is now functionally adjacent to the central military districts of the interior. The veins of extraction now run deep into the bedrock of the plateau, fueled by the unreal efficiency of the new rail line. Beneath the alpine meadows and the glacial streams of Ningqi and Lhasa lie some of the largest untapped deposits of copper, lithium, and gold on the planet. For decades, the sheer height and volatility of the terrain made large-scale mining a financial impossibility. The railway has solved that geographic problem. The investigation into the rail's cargo logs reveals a systematic removal of raw materials, moving thousands of tons of ore every week from high-altitude concessions to the industrial smelters of the lowlands. This is the true meaning of the third pole engineering. The mountains are being treated as a warehouse of commodities for a global manufacturing machine. The rail line provides the high-capacity conveyor belt required to make the gutting of the Tibetan earth profitable at a massive scale. While the official narrative speaks of green development, the reality on the ground is a landscape being carved open for the minerals that power the modern digital world. This is not a project of local enrichment. It is a project of resource drainage, where the geological wealth of an ancient land is being traded for the short-term requirements of a centralized industrial plan. The labor transfer mandate is the administrative tool used to clear the path for this extraction. Under the guise of ecological migration, the state has initiated a program to move hundreds of thousands of nomadic Tibetans from their ancestral grazing lands into standardized, modern housing clusters. The official justification is that traditional herding is harmful to the fragile, high-altitude environment, a claim that contradicts centuries of sustainable nomadic practice. The investigation into these relocations reveals a policy shift designed to break the bond between the people and the land. By framing the nomadic way of life as an environmental threat, the authorities have created a legal mechanism to move populations into areas where they are easier to monitor and manage. These relocations are often presented as voluntary, yet they are accompanied by the systematic reduction of grazing rights and the closure of traditional migration routes. The nomads are not being moved to improve the environment, they are being moved to eliminate the off-grid human presence from the resource-rich highlands. Once the people are removed, the state has a blank slate to expand its mining operations and military zones without the inconvenience of a sovereign local population. The human cost of this transition is found in the life of the relocated nomad, who must trade ancestral sovereignty for a factory job near the rail hubs. The investigation into the resettlement centers near Ningxi reveals a population in a state of profound shock. Men and women whose identities were forged in the vastness of the plateau, managing herds across hundreds of miles of open horizon, are now being trained for 10-hour shifts in state-affiliated manufacturing units. They are taught to assemble electronics or process textiles in a controlled indoor environment, their labor now measured by the clock rather than the seasons. This is the industrialization of the Tibetan soul. The modern housing provided by the state is often a concrete room in a high-density block, a space that offers amenities like electricity and running water while stripping away the physical freedom that was the core of the nomadic existence. In the factory, they are no longer masters of their own time or territory. They are units of production within a centralized economy. The transition is absolute, leaving no room for the traditional skills that allowed them to survive at 4,000 meters for a millennium. They are the new urban proletariat, their history traded for a wage and a social credit score. The end of the horizon is a psychological and cultural termination that occurs when the concrete room replaces the open range. For a culture defined by movement and the cyclical rhythm of the land, the loss of the physical horizon is a death sentence for the nomadic identity. The investigation into the psychological state of the relocated Tibetans shows a pattern of social fragmentation and a loss of cultural purpose. Without the grazing lands, the traditional rituals, the oral histories of the landscape, and the collective memory of the tribe begin to wither. The youth are particularly vulnerable, as they are disconnected from the heritage of their elders and pushed toward a standardized, Mandarin-speaking urban future. This is the unreal nature of the resettlement, a life that looks modernized on paper, but is culturally hollowed out in reality. The state has successfully used the impossible infrastructure of the rail line to anchor a people to a single point on the map, ensuring that the fluid, untraceable movements of the past can never return. The nomadic spirit is being suffocated by the very amenities that were promised to save them, proving that in the new China, the most dangerous thing a person can possess is a sense of place that is not defined by the grid. The grid of finality is the ultimate goal of the Tibetan rail investigation. The impossible infrastructure functions as a high-capacity net, ensuring that every resource and every individual on the plateau is accounted for within the state's centralized ledger. This is the broader mystery of the unreal China, the construction of a geography that is designed to be inescapable. By piercing the bedrock and relocating the people, the authorities have ended the era of Himalayan autonomy. The mountains are no longer a sanctuary, they are an asset class. The people are no longer sovereign, they are a workforce. The rail line is the physical manifestation of a power that values the total control of the map over the survival of the cultures that once lived upon it. As we look at the high-speed trains moving through the 47 tunnels of the Third Pole, we are not looking at progress. We are looking at a system of finality, where the natural world has been fully subordinated to the requirements of the machine. The investigation concludes that the unreal China is a world where there is no longer an outside, a world where the mountains, the rivers, and the people have all been integrated into a single, sterile, and perfectly monitored reality. 40 meters beneath the surface of Qiandao Lake, the lion city of Xicheng rests in a state of suspended animation. The investigation into this underwater metropolis reveals a physical reality that is as haunting as it is preserved. Built during the Ming Dynasty, the city's stone arches, intricate wood carvings, and fortified walls remain perfectly intact, shielded from the wind and the sun by a massive column of cold, low-oxygen water. This is the investigative tension. A 600-year-old civilization is held in a permanent, liquid grip, its streets silent and its buildings vacant. We are looking at a landscape that was not lost to time or natural disaster, but to a deliberate, administrative choice. The unnatural silence of the deep is a testament to the scale of the intervention. While the surface of the lake is now a thriving tourist destination, the reality beneath is a frozen record of a world that was forcibly terminated. The city exists in a twilight zone where the architecture of the past is preserved by the very medium that destroyed its future. To touch the stone of the Lion City is to touch the cold remains of a sovereignty that was drowned to power a new era of industrial expansion. The branding of Xicheng as China's Atlantis is a calculated deception, a marketing shield designed to sanitize the memory of its destruction. By framing the city as a mythical, lost wonder, the official narrative attempts to distance the state from the act of drowning a living culture. Atlantis was a legend lost to the sea. Xicheng was a prefecture flooded by a dam. The investigation into this rebranding reveals how the language of mystery is used to distract from the history of displacement. There is no mystery to how the city ended up at the bottom of the lake. It was a $1,959 engineering project. By calling it an underwater wonder, the authorities shift the focus from the human cost to the aesthetic novelty of the site. This is a tactical maneuver to overwrite the trauma of the 290,000 residents who were forced to leave. The unreal beauty of the submerged arches serves as a distraction from the state-led erasure of 600 years of cultural lineage. We are not looking at a discovery. We are looking at the evidence of a liquidation. The Atlantis label is a way to turn a crime of administrative violence into a curated experience for the modern traveler. The $1,959 administrative decree that authorized the Xin'an River Dam was executed with a brutal, clinical efficiency. The investigation into the timeline reveals that 290,000 people were given only a few weeks to abandon their ancestral homes, their farms, and the graves of their forebears. This was not a negotiation, it was a mandate. The state treated a living civilization as a temporary obstacle to the generation of hydroelectric power. The record of the evacuation shows a population in a state of sudden, forced migration, moving their belongings into the hills as the water began to rise behind the newly closed gates of the dam. The decree prioritized the industrial requirements of the interior over the 600-year history of the Lion City. This is the logic of the unreal China. The past is a resource to be spent in the pursuit of the future. The city was not moved, it was abandoned. The speed of the flooding ensured that the physical record of the people's lives, their furniture, their tools, their local archives, was swallowed before it could be salvaged. The dam was a machine of finality, a wall built to ensure that the valley's history would be permanently separated from its geography. The anatomy of administrative violence is found in the trauma of the families who watched their identity vanish beneath the rising tide. The investigation into the aftermath of the flood reveals a systematic erasure of the legal and social records that anchored these 290,000 individuals to their land. When the water claimed Xicheng, it did more than drown the buildings. It severed the connection between the people and their lineage. The displaced residents were moved to higher ground or distant provinces, their communal bonds shattered by the logistical requirements of the resettlement. The trauma of the flood was compounded by the loss of the physical landscape that gave their lives meaning. A stone arch was not just a piece of architecture, it was a marker of a family's status and history. By drowning these markers, the state effectively reset the social clock, turning a rooted population into a floating demographic of migrants. The violence was not just in the relocation, but in the silence that followed. For decades, the existence of the city was ignored by the national record, treated as a necessary sacrifice for the march of progress. The people were expected to forget the world they had built, their memory treated as an inconvenience to the success of the dam. The cold, low-oxygen environment of Qiandao Lake has accidentally created a museum of state-sanctioned displacement. Because the water is so still and the temperature so constant, the biological decay that usually erases a drowned city has been slowed to a near halt. This is the physical preservation of a grave. The stone lions and the grand gates of the Ming era stand in eerie perfection, their details as sharp as the day the water arrived. The investigation into the site's preservation reveals that this was not the intent of the engineers. It is a geological fluke that has kept the evidence of the 1959 decree visible to the modern eye. The city is a permanent, submerged testimony to the state's willingness to drown the past. The wood has not rotted. The carvings have not eroded. This accidental museum forces us to look at the scale of what was discarded. It is a world where the buildings are more durable than the rights of the people who lived in them. The preservation of the Lion City ensures that the unreal China can never fully hide its foundations. The city remains a silent witness, a submerged reality that continues to exist beneath the surface of the state-managed tourism industry. The Xicheng investigation brings us to the concept of the drowned conscience. The unreal beauty of the underwater city serves as a permanent, liquid testimony to a power that values the grid over the soul. The Lion City is not a mystery to be solved, but a reality to be acknowledged. It is the prototype for the sponge cities and the resettlement centers we have investigated elsewhere, a landscape where human history is treated as a liquid asset. The investigation concludes that the state has a long history of terraforming the past to power the future. By drowning the Lion City, the authorities proved that they could overwrite the map at any scale, turning a prefecture into a battery. The mystery of the unreal China is found in this willingness to sacrifice the real to maintain the spectacle. As we look through the 40 meters of water at the stone arches of Xicheng, we see the blueprint for a civilization that is built on the erasure of its own memory. The city is a ghost that will not fade, a reminder that every miracle of modern engineering in this landscape is built over a grave. The water of Qiandao Lake is not just a reservoir for energy, it is a reservoir for the stories that were never meant to be told again. The Three Gorges Dam is a kinetic scar across the heart of the Yangtze, a structure of such immense mass that it has physically altered the rotation of the Earth. By holding back 42 billion tons of water, the state has performed a feat of hydrological dominance that transcends simple engineering. The investigation into this reservoir reveals a weight so profound it has shifted the planet's axis by several centimeters, a literal movement of the world to accommodate a national mandate. This is the ultimate marker of authority over the natural order. We are looking at a landscape where the river is no longer a flowing entity, but a captured resource, a 1,600-kilometer stretch of valley turned into a static battery. The unreal scale of the concrete wall is a physical manifestation of a power that does not recognize geographical limits. To the administrative mind, the Yangtze was a problem of volatility. The dam is the permanent solution. But the cost of this stability is a fundamental rupture in the Earth's crust. The sheer pressure of the accumulated water has introduced a new variable into the regional geology, turning a living river system into a pressurized industrial zone. The dam does not just generate electricity, it generates a new reality where the very movement of the stars is secondary to the requirements of the state's energy grid. The erasure of the Yangtze topography is a silent catastrophe that has removed 1,350 villages and 140 towns from the map. The investigation into the flooded zones reveals a deliberate liquidation of the historical landscape. For over 600 kilometers, the ancient riverbank sites of Neolithic settlements, dynastic fortifications, and centuries of communal life were submerged beneath the rising tide. This was not a natural disaster, but a planned drowning. The state treated these 1,300 villages as temporary obstacles to the construction of the reservoir. By the time the final gates were closed, the physical record of the Middle Yangtze had been permanently deleted. This is the investigative silence that follows the march of progress. The archives are underwater, the stone markers are silted over, and the names of the towns have been struck from the National Registry. The unreal calm of the reservoir surface masks the violent removal of a civilization's foundation. The landscape was not just changed, it was replaced. The river that once dictated the rhythm of Chinese history has been converted into a featureless lake, a controlled utility where the memory of the land is no longer permitted to exist outside of the official state narrative. Hydrological colonization is the process of processing 1.3 million people into a floating demographic of displaced units. This is a population larger than many sovereign nations, forced to trade their ancestral riverfront for the narrow dimensions of resettlement clusters. The investigation into these relocations reveals a systematic dismantling of the social and economic bonds that had sustained the Yangtze communities for generations. These 1.3 million individuals were moved to distant provinces or high-density urban blocks, their lives reconfigured to fit the needs of a centralized industrial plan. They are the human collateral of the dam. By severing their connection to the river, the state effectively ended their status as a rooted people. In the new apartment blocks, the former fishermen and farmers are separated from the water that gave their lives meaning, forced to adapt to a world where their labor is a commodity and their history is a liability. This is the colonization of the geography by the state's hydraulic will. The people were not rescued from the river was cleared of its people to make room for the machine. The trauma of this displacement is the hidden engine of the project, a massive human erasure that allowed for the birth of the world's largest hydroelectric spectacle. The seismic burden of the Three Gorges Dam is the unintended consequence of engineering hubris meeting geological instability. The investigation into reservoir-induced seismicity reveals a direct correlation between the filling of the reservoir and a massive surge in local tremors and landslides. By placing 42 billion tons of water on top of ancient fault lines, the state has introduced a lethal pressure into the Earth's crust. The mountains surrounding the Yangtze are now in a state of constant, fragile adjustment, their slopes collapsing into the water as the weight of the reservoir forces the ground to buckle. This is the disconnect between the unreal promise of a permanent structure and the reality of a volatile planet. The records show thousands of landslides since the dam's completion, events that have claimed lives and destroyed the very resettlement infrastructure built for the displaced. The state continues to frame these events as natural occurrences, but the investigative data points to a man-made origin. The Earth is reacting to the burden of the dam, a geological revolt against a power that attempted to bypass the laws of physics. The impossible engineering of the wall has created a landscape of permanent risk, where the safety of the millions living downstream is tethered to a concrete barrier that must now hold back not just the water, but the Earth itself. The end of the River Seoul is the final transition of the Chinese landscape into a fully managed utility. The unreal scale of the Three Gorges Dam signifies the total subordination of the Yangtze to the requirements of the state. The pulse of the river, the seasonal floods, the movement of silt, the migration of life has been replaced by the sterile hum of the turbine. The investigation concludes that the dam is the prototype for a world where nature is no longer a participant in human history, but a resource to be consumed. The Yangtze has been stripped of its geological autonomy, its flow dictated by a control room in Yichang, rather than the snows of the Tibetan Plateau. This is the ultimate goal of the Unreal China project: the creation of a geography that is fully predictable, perfectly monitored, and entirely profitable. The human cost is a loss of a sacred connection to the water, a severance that turns a national icon into a high-tech drainage ditch. As we stand on the crest of the dam, looking out over the submerged graves of 1,300 villages, we realize that the miracle of the machine is built on the death of the real. The river has been conquered, the people have been moved, and the map has been rewritten to ensure that the state's power is the only thing that remains visible in the rising water. The selection of the Yangtze and Shinhan flood zones was never a matter of simple engineering convenience. The investigation into the site surveys reveals a deliberate preference for valleys that held the highest density of ancient siltlands and cultural clusters. By drowning these specific corridors, the authorities did more than create a reservoir. They executed a strategic drowning of the physical evidence of regional autonomy. These were areas where the geography itself supported a decentralized way of life, with fertile soils and river access that allowed communities to thrive independent of the distant urban centers. The decision to submerge these zones was a tactical choice to replace a complex, lived landscape with a featureless, manageable body of water. To the administrative eye, the historical depth of these valleys was a liability, a reminder of a time before the state's total integration of the interior. By raising the water level, the government effectively turned the map into a blank slate, ensuring that the only permitted future for these regions was one dictated by the hydroelectric grid. The unreal expanse of the new inland seas serves as a liquid shroud, covering the tracks of a civilization that the modern mandate could not fully assimilate. The rising water of the new reservoirs effectively erased the physical evidence of non-Han identities and localized customs that had persisted for centuries. The investigation into the flooded microcultures of the Middle Yangtze and the Zhejiang Hills reveals a landscape that was once a patchwork of diverse regional traditions. These were the areas of the other China, where dialects, architectural styles, and social structures challenged the homogeneity of the central state. By creating an unreal inland sea, the authorities dismantled the physical anchors of these identities: the clan temples, the ancestral shrines, and the unique terrace systems that define the local people. This is the deletion of history through hydrology. Once the buildings are submerged and the people are processed into standardized resettlement blocks, the material basis for their distinct culture is gone. The state uses the water as a tool of cultural leveling, ensuring that the relocated populations are stripped of the geographic markers that once allowed them to resist the pull of the center. The impossible scale of the flood serves to finalize a transition where every citizen is a unit in a uniform administrative grid, their specific pasts dissolved in a massive, state-managed basin. The geological layer of the valley floors served as a ledger of resistance, a physical record of human survival and rebellion that had accumulated over millennia. Beneath the current silt of the reservoir lies the evidence of centuries of small-scale autonomy, the remains of irrigation systems, local boundary markers, and the foundations of villages that had outlasted dynasties. This record is now permanently sealed under billions of tons of water and the new industrial silt of the dam. The investigation into these submerged layers suggests that the state used the flood to overwrite a narrative of endurance that it did not control. Silt is more than just earth. It is the physical memory of how a people managed their environment without the intervention of a centralized machine. By burying this ledger, the authorities have ensured that future generations will never be able to read the true history of their land. The unreal water acts as a heavy, liquid seal, preventing any archaeological or social excavation of the truths that once lived in the valley. The past is not just hidden, it is compressed under the weight of a national energy mandate, turned into a silent, inaccessible stratum that can no longer speak to the present. The reservoir functions as a liquid border, a physical barrier to memory that prevents future generations from ever accessing the ruins of their heritage. Unlike a land-based site that can be visited or reclaimed, a drowned landscape is a forbidden zone, accessible only to the state-sanctioned diver or the military-grade censor. The investigation into the access restrictions around these unreal water bodies reveals a pattern of administrative enclosure. The water is used to create a permanent distance between the people and their history. Even if the descendants of the displaced return to the shore, they are met with a featureless surface that provides no hint of the world that lies 40 meters below. This is the ultimate tool of historical erasure, a geography that cannot be touched, walked, or mapped by the common citizen. The state has converted a historical landscape into a high-security utility, ensuring that the memory of the Lion City or the Yangtze villages remains a fragment of the past, detached from the physical reality of the earth. The liquid border is the finality of the resettlement, a wall of water that is more effective than any fence in ensuring that the old ways are never retrieved or revived. The architecture of forgetting is the final stage of the transition from a rooted historical geography to a sanitized administrative map. The state uses unreal water and impossible dams to ensure that the past has no physical anchor in the landscape. The investigation concludes that this is the core of the geographical memory hole, the creation of a world where the physical earth is no longer a witness to the human story. When the map is cleared of its ruins and its siltlands, the only narrative that remains is the one provided by the current administration. We are seeing a landscape that has been surgically cleaned of its contradictions and its resistance. The unreal beauty of the reservoir and the high-tech glow of the dam are the new monuments of a civilization that has decided that remembering is a luxury it can no longer afford. The geography has been turned into a servant of the ledger, a place where the water flows only to power the future, and the silence of the deep is the only response to the questions of the displaced. The architecture of the unreal China is built on this foundation of forgetting, a world where the map is rewritten every generation to ensure that the people who once knew the land are the only ones who can no longer find their way home. New Ziggy is a vertical purgatory, a concrete grid of high-density blocks perched on the steep cliffs of the Yangtze. The investigation into its layout reveals a radical architectural shift that was designed to break the spirit of an agrarian society. For centuries, the people of the Old Valley lived at the water's edge, their lives defined by the seasonal flow and the fertile riverbanks. When the dam arrived, they were processed into these cliffside units, traded for a landscape where every movement is vertical and every space is controlled by the state utility. This transition caused an immediate social rupture. The communal courtyards and riverfront markets were replaced by narrow elevators and locked doors. In the old town, your neighbor was a lifelong ally. In the new blocks, your neighbor is a stranger assigned to the next unit by a central computer. We are looking at a population that has been surgically removed from its natural environment and reinserted into a high-rise machine. The unreal sight of these massive apartment clusters clinging to the rock is a visual marker of a people who have no ground left to stand on. They are living in a permanent state of suspension, overlooking a river they can no longer touch, their lives reduced to the dimensions of a state-provided floor plan. The economics of the displaced is a state-managed trap that has left the elderly and the unskilled in a condition of permanent financial precarity. The investigation into the resettlement stipend reveals a cynical financial cycle. While the initial compensation seemed generous to a rural farmer, it was rapidly drained by the high cost of living in the new urban blocks. In the Old Valley, food and fuel were gathered from the land. In New Ziggy, every necessity is a commodity that must be purchased from a state-approved vendor. The former residents now face monthly bills for water, heat, and electricity that did not exist in their previous lives. This is the stipend trap. The money provided to relocate the population is effectively reclaimed by the state through the utility grid. Many of the older migrants, who lack the digital skills to participate in the new economy, find themselves isolated and bankrupt. They are the invisible casualties of the modernization mandate, people who were promised a better life, but were instead sold a debt-oriented existence. The state-run cooperatives offer menial labor, but the wages rarely keep pace with the rising costs of the modern world. The investigation shows that the prosperity of the dam is a top-down phenomenon that rarely reaches the people whose land was sacrificed to build it. The psychological rot of the reservoir is a silent epidemic that the tourism boards work tirelessly to omit. The investigation into the surge in clinical depression and suicide rates among the Three Gorges migrants reveals a profound and unaddressed trauma. There is a specific, agonizing weight to living on the edge of a water body that contains your drowned heritage. To look out of your window and know that your childhood home, your family's graves, and the streets where you once walked are 40 meters below the surface is to live in a state of permanent grief. This is not just nostalgia, it is a clinical severance of identity. The state's insistence that the resettlement was a success has forced this pain underground, creating a population that suffers in silence to maintain the official narrative of progress. The record of local healthcare centers shows a massive increase in stress-related illnesses since the final flooding of the valley. These are the impossible humans, people who have been told they are part of a miracle while they feel the decay of their own history. The unreal beauty of the mist on the water is a haunting reminder of what was lost, a liquid shroud that masks the psychological collapse of a million people whose sense of self was anchored to the valley floor. The social fragmentation of the grid was a deliberate administrative strategy to prevent organized resistance among the displaced. The investigation into the housing assignments reveals that the state intentionally broke apart the Danway and village kinship systems that had existed for generations. Families and neighbors who had lived side by side for decades were scattered across different blocks or even different cities. By disrupting these traditional support networks, the authorities ensured that no localized power structure could survive the move. This is the destruction of the community through the application of the urban plan. In the new high-rises, the collective voice of the village is silenced, replaced by the individual isolation of the apartment unit. The state-managed housing is a tool of pacification, a way to turn a cohesive social group into a fragmented demographic of state dependence. Without the communal support of the old ways, the migrants are more easily integrated into the state's digital monitoring systems and labor programs. The unreal order of the new streets is a physical proof of this fragmentation, a world where every person is accounted for, but no one is truly connected. The loss of kinship is the final stage of the resettlement, the moment when the people cease to be a community and become a workforce. The tourism mask is the final layer of the unreal nature of the resettlement, a performance of beauty that hides the psychological collapse of the local population. Every year, millions of global travelers come to marvel at the impossible engineering of the dam and the dramatic vistas of the Three Gorges. They are sold an image of a thriving, modernized region where the people have been elevated from their former poverty. But this is a state secret. The investigation reveals that the tourism industry itself is a closed loop, where the revenue funds the spectacle while the displaced people work as background actors in their own tragedy. The psychological rot is carefully managed, kept out of the frame of the tourist's camera. The unreal beauty of the landscape is a curated commodity, a visual distraction from the reality of a people forced to live on top of their own drowned history. We are seeing a landscape that has been turned into a stage, where the suffering of the individual is the price of the collective image. The investigation concludes that the Three Gorges project is the ultimate triumph of the administrative over the human, a world where the spectacle of the miracle is more important than the survival of the soul. The map has been perfected, but the people who once gave it life have been erased in all but the most superficial sense. The physical transformation of the Guizhou karst landscape is a silent, industrial-scale excavation that has hollowed out the core of ancient peaks to create massive, subterranean vaults. These mountains, once the site of remote village life and spiritual retreats, are now the high-tech bunkers for the server farms of Apple and Huawei. The investigation into the Guianyu area reveals a mountain range that has been surgically altered, its limestone interiors replaced by miles of climate-controlled racks and fiber optic cables. This is not a project of environmental integration. It is the total consumption of the geology by the requirements of the digital state. By carving out the bedrock, the authorities have turned the natural defenses of the plateau into a physical shield for the nation's data. We are looking at a landscape where the mountain is no longer a geographical feature, but a hollowed-out container for the processing power of the interior. The unreal sight of these mountainside entrances, guarded by high-security gates and biometric scanners, signals a world where the Earth itself has been repurposed as a massive hard drive. The peaks of Guizhou are being stripped of their ecological identity, their internal silence now filled with the constant, high-pitched hum of millions of spinning drives as the state cements its digital presence into the very foundation of the Earth. The logic of subterranean cold storage is a clinical application of geography to the energy requirements of the global cloud. The investigation into the mountain interiors reveals that the natural, constant temperature of the deep karst is being used as a massive, passive cooling mechanism for the server farms. By burying the hardware under hundreds of feet of stone, the state has eliminated the need for the traditional, energy-intensive air conditioning systems that plague lowland data centers. This is the energy sink strategy, using the geological heat dissipation properties of the Earth as a functional component of the industrial grid. The mountain is no longer a wilderness, it is a radiator. This approach turns the physical properties of the karst, its moisture, its density, and its thermal stability, into a state-managed utility. The investigation shows that the unreal efficiency of these centers is built on the exploitation of a natural resource that was never intended for industrial use. The cold air of the caves, which once supported unique ecosystems and local legends, is now a commodity used to keep the processes of the global economy from melting down. It is a world where the climate of the mountain is perfectly regulated to serve the machine, while the world outside is left to deal with the environmental fallout of the energy production that fuels this high-tech frontier. The transition from cloud-based storage to physical, mountain-entrenched hardware represents the ultimate form of data sovereignty, where the firewalls are literally made of stone. The investigation into the security mandate of the Guizhou Cloud Valley reveals a deep-seated distrust of the open internet. By embedding the nation's most sensitive data within the bedrock of the interior, the state has created a physical fortress that is immune to conventional electronic or physical interference. This is the realization of a geological firewall, a world where the sovereignty of the state is measured by the depth of its subterranean vaults. The data of every citizen, every transaction, and every administrative decree is now physically anchored to the terrain, ensuring that the control of the interior is absolute. This is not a virtual cloud, it is a mountain of code. The investigation shows that this move toward geological storage is a tactical preparation for a future of fragmented global networks. By burying the servers in the karst, the authorities have ensured that even in a total communication blackout, the state's digital memory remains intact and protected by the weight of the Himalayas. The unreal permanence of the stone is the final guarantee of the state's digital longevity, turning the ancient geology into a silent partner in the management of the modern population. A human-centered investigation into the mountain communities of Guizhou reveals the profound irony of a high-tech digital center surrounded by displaced agrarian poverty, while the servers of the global elite hum within the hollowed peaks. The people whose ancestral caves and grazing lands were seized for these digital infrastructure zones find themselves living in a state of sudden, forced obsolescence. The investigation reveals that the mountain villages were cleared with the same clinical efficiency used in the Yangtze Valley. Their residents moved to standardized blocks on the periphery of the new tech hubs. These people, who once managed the land through a complex understanding of the karst environment, are now strangers in their own geography. They look up at the peaks that once held their stories and see only the vents and cooling towers of a global data machine. The unreal wealth generated by the processing of millions of bytes of data never reaches the hands of the displaced farmers, who are often left to work as low-wage security guards or cleaners for the very facilities that replaced their homes. This is the digital divide in its most physical form, a world where the earth is used to store the secrets of the future, while the people of the past are discarded as a sociological remnant. The hollowing of the Guizhou Mountains represents the final stage of terraforming, a landscape where the physical earth no longer supports biological life, but sustains the processing power of the state. The investigation concludes that this is the final merger of earth and code. The mountains are no longer part of a living ecosystem. They are the hardware of a national operating system. Every tunnel blasted and every server rack installed is a step toward a world where the geography is fully integrated into the administrative grid. This is the broader mystery of the unreal China, a civilization that is physically rebuilding the planet to ensure its own survival. The karst peaks are the new monuments of this era, structures that appear natural from the outside but are entirely artificial within. As we move through the cold, echoing vaults of the Cloud Valley, we realize that we are standing inside the mind of the machine. The geography has been hollowed out to make room for a future that has no need for the sun, the wind, or the people who once walked these slopes. The Earth has been conquered, not for its beauty or its resources, but for its capacity to act as a silent, eternal witness to the state's total control over the digital horizon. The Tarim Desert Highway is a 522-kilometer asphalt anchor driven into the heart of the Taklamakan, a landscape known to those who live on its edges as the Sea of Death. This is not a road built for the convenience of travelers, but a physical statement of intent in a geography that has resisted permanent human presence for thousands of years. The investigation into its construction reveals an engineering feat designed to stabilize a world of shifting dunes that can reach heights of 60 meters. To prevent the road from being swallowed by the sand, the state has deployed a massive system of reed fences and plastic grids, a synthetic skeleton laid over the desert floor. This is the primary artery for the industrialization of the deep interior. The highway serves as a high-speed conduit into a geographic void, allowing for the rapid movement of heavy machinery and state personnel into a region that was once protected by its own hostility. We are looking at a landscape where the natural movement of the Earth has been forcibly paused by the application of industrial force. The unreal sight of a black ribbon of tar cutting through the endless yellow of the dunes is a visual proof of the state's decision to treat the desert as a conquered territory, a place where the wind is no longer permitted to dictate the map. Running alongside this asphalt anchor is a 400-kilometer shelter belt, an artificial green wall of shrubs that defies every law of the arid environment. The investigation into this green corridor reveals an unreal sight, a lush, managed forest in a landscape that receives zero rainfall and experiences temperatures that can melt the surface of the road. This miracle of greenery is sustained by a hidden network of non-renewable aquifers pumped from deep beneath the dunes. Every few kilometers, a small, automated station pulls high salinity water from the subterranean depths to feed a complex drip irrigation system. This is the life support machine of the desert highway. The state has created a temporary oasis to protect the asphalt from the encroaching sand, but the cost is the depletion of ancient water reserves that can never be replaced. The green wall is a facade of environmental health, masking a reality of ecological drainage. The plants are not part of a living ecosystem. They are functional components of a machine designed to ensure the road remains open at any cost. This is the terraforming of the Taklamakan, where the state uses the planet's hidden resources to maintain the illusion of a tilled and managed garden in the middle of a wasteland. The economic engine driving this road is the massive fossil fuel reserve of the Tarim Basin, which contains an estimated 20 billion tons of oil and gas. The investigation into the industrial clusters along the highway reveals that the road exists as a high-capacity conveyor for the energy requirements of the coastal megacities. Before this asphalt was laid, the extraction of these deep desert resources was a logistical nightmare. Now, the state can move billions of tons of carbon from the heart of Xinjiang to the factories of the east with clinical precision. This is the core of the Sea of Death investigation. The desert is being gutted to power the very modernization that is erasing its silence. The highway is the umbilical cord of the industrial state, reaching into the deep earth to pull out the remnants of a prehistoric world. We see a landscape where the dunes are dotted with high-tech drilling rigs and automated pumping stations, all linked by the black line of the road. This is not a project of development for the local people, but a project of extraction for the center. The 20 billion tons of oil are the prize that justifies the impossible engineering, turning a sovereign wilderness into a state-owned energy farm where the value of the land is measured strictly by the density of its hydrocarbons. The highway also functions as a grid of total visibility, the ultimate tool for the strategic enclosure of the Xinjiang region. The investigation into the security infrastructure of the road reveals a network of automated checkpoints, facial recognition cameras, and high-frequency sensors that track every movement through the desert. In a region where the geography was once a tool for escape and resistance, the state has used the road to turn the void into a monitored enclosure. This is the strategic enclosure. The desert is no longer a place to disappear, but a place to be seen. The highway allows the security apparatus to project power into the most remote corners of the basin within hours, ensuring that no activity occurs outside the gaze of the central administrative hub. By hollowing out the isolation of the Taklamakan, the authorities have ended the era of the untraceable traveler. The road is a high-tech net draped over the sand, a physical manifestation of a power that requires total visibility to maintain control. The unreal calm of the desert highway is the calm of a high-security facility, where the silence is not a lack of sound, but a state of absolute digital observation. The investigation concludes that the impossible highway represents the human erasure of the Silk Road. For centuries, the paths through the Taklamakan were defined by the movement of trade, the exchange of cultures, and the survival of local oasis communities. The modern highway has replaced this human-centered geography with a sterile, state-managed corridor. The old Silk Road was a network of relationships. The new road is a zone of pure extraction and control. By bypassing the traditional routes and the local people, the state has finalized the transition from a land of living history to a utility for the industrial machine. This is the final mystery of the unreal China, a world where the physical earth is repurposed to serve the state's energy and security needs, leaving no room for the people who once called the desert home. The highway is a monument to this displacement, a black scar that tells the story of a civilization that has decided the void is only valuable if it can be paved, pumped, and policed. As we travel the 522 kilometers of the Tarim Highway, we realize we are not moving toward a destination, but through a landscape that has been surgically cleaned of its human past to make room for an automated future. The investigation into these impossible places reveals a truth that transcends the steel and the stone. We are not looking at a collection of architectural wonders, but a coordinated beta test for a post-geographic world. In this new reality, the natural constraints of the earth, the impassable mountain, the volatile river, and the vast desert have been declared obsolete by an administrative decree. The hollowing of the karst peaks and the drowning of the ancient valleys are the physical proof of a philosophy that views the planet as a mere platform for data and energy. This is the post-geographic thesis, a world where the landscape no longer dictates the terms of human existence. Instead, the state has built a synthetic geography that is entirely subordinate to the requirements of the central grid. The investigation shows that the unreal nature of these sites is a deliberate design choice, intended to signal the end of a world where nature was a sovereign participant in history. We are witnessing the birth of a civilization that has decoupled itself from the earth, treating the bedrock and the water as a blank slate for the projection of a singular, monolithic power. This transition from organic growth to algorithmic terraforming has replaced the human-centered geography of the past with a sterile, data-driven grid. The investigation into the infrastructure of the interior reveals a landscape that is no longer allowed to be unpredictable. Every bridge, every tunnel, and every reservoir is a physical extension of a state-managed algorithm designed to maximize efficiency and total visibility. In this world, the terrain is not something to be lived with, but something to be solved. The state has converted the natural world into a series of inputs and outputs, where the value of a mountain is measured by its capacity to cool a server, and the value of a river is measured by its wattage. This algorithmic approach to the land eliminates the possibility of the unknown. The mystery of the wilderness is being systematically removed, replaced by a monitored enclosure where every movement is tracked and every resource is logged. The unreal order of the new cities is the visual evidence of this shift. A world where the map has become the territory, and the territory has been forced to comply with the map's perfect digital logic. The final cost of this unreal landscape is the erasure of the biological pulse that once connected the people to the land. The investigation reveals a population that has been transitioned from living with the rhythm of the seasons to existing entirely within a synthetic environment. When you move a nomadic herder to a factory block or a river fisherman to a cliffside high-rise, you are not just changing their address, you are silencing the pulse of their history. The hum of the processor has replaced the sound of the river, and the glow of the screen has replaced the horizon of the plateau. This is the human erasure required by the post-geographic world. The people are no longer allowed to have a relationship with the earth that is not mediated by the state's digital ledger. Their survival is now tethered to the machine, and their identity is a data point in a centralized system. The unreal images of the Cloud Valley and the Three Gorges are a preview of a future where the human spirit has been hollowed out along with the mountains, leaving only a workforce that exists within a perfectly regulated but entirely artificial reality. This investigation concludes with the chilling realization that these landscapes are a preview of a global future. The hollowing of the earth and the drowning of the past are not unique to one nation. They are the beta test for a world where every mountain, every ocean, and every individual is integrated into a single, monitored ledger of power. The unreal China is a prototype for a civilization that has fully subordinated nature to the algorithm. We leave the viewer with the understanding that the impossible engineering they have witnessed is the blueprint for a planet that is being rebuilt as a massive, high-security utility. This is the end of the geographic era. As the digital world becomes physically embedded in the bedrock, the distinction between the real and the manufactured disappears. The Taklamakan Highway, the Guizhou Vaults, and the submerged arches of Xicheng are markers of a finality that is approaching for us all. The future being tested in the deep interior is one where the Earth is no longer a home, but a controlled environment, and where the human story is only permitted to continue if it can be written into the code of the state's total and permanent machine.